All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is September the 13th, and we are going to do the second, I guess, edition of the video blog series that I'm calling The Important Takeaways. We'll do a nutritional and supplementation type deal here. I'm just going to go with the top three things that I get asked, or the top three things that I preach to people in a day. The things that I think are the most important for you to know to start on a nutritional and supplementation landscape. So the first one we're going to go with, we'll dive right in, is the low to no carbohydrate breakfast. This one's the most important one to me, and the reasoning for that is threefold. So we'll start with the first reason. I like a low to no carbohydrate breakfast because when you don't take in carbohydrates with breakfast, it gives the body what they're calling metabolic flexibility. So to better describe that, if you take in carbohydrates with breakfast, you've basically preset your body for the day to only be able to use carbohydrates as a fuel source. When you don't take in carbohydrates with breakfast, you give your body this term metabolic flexibility, which allows your body to use both carbohydrates and fat for fuel for the day. Which for anyone looking to burn fat is a fantastic thing. The second reason I like the low to no carbohydrate breakfast is the release of serotonin. When you take in a big carbohydrate meal, your body's going to release serotonin. It's going to give you that lethargic feeling. We've all had it when we've eaten a big, dense carbohydrate meal. You get that happy feeling, that lethargic feeling, and all you want to do is take a nap. I don't know about you, but my biggest production time for the day is first thing in the morning. I'm the busiest. I like to get the most done. So I don't want that crash. I want to have a sustained amount of energy throughout the day. So keeping the carbohydrates away from this period in the day does that for me. I find I get a more steady stream of energy, and I can be more productive without getting that lethargic feeling. The third reasoning why I like a low to no carbohydrate breakfast is insulin sensitivity. I think insulin sensitivity is the biggest problem with society nowadays as far as health and nutrition goes. If you have poor insulin sensitivity, it means that your body has a hard time using carbohydrates. Basically, the worse your insulin sensitivity is, the more likely you're going to store those as fat and not burn them as fuel. So obviously this is a dramatic thing if fat loss is your goal, or like I said, even if fat loss isn't your immediate goal right now, it's still going to help you overall to get nutrients to where they need to go and utilize nutrients better. So improving insulin sensitivity over a long period of time is going to be drastic for your health. And I think the first way to start doing that is to have a low to no carbohydrate breakfast. So when I say a low to no carbohydrate breakfast, the reason I mean low is because you're going to take in some accidental carbohydrates. Now I want your breakfast to consist of three things: a protein source, a fat source, and a green leafy vegetable. And again, the reason why I say accidental carbohydrates is because you're going to intake some of those from the green leafy vegetable portion. They will contain carbohydrates. But keeping them green and leafy means that you're going to keep them fibrous. And fiber basically burns itself in the body, essentially. I don't count grams of fiber for grams of carbohydrates. So because they are so fiber dense, basically I don't count those grams of carbohydrates for any of your intake for the day. So that's the reason why I say low to no, because you will take in some carbohydrates accidentally from having these green vegetables. As far as a protein source goes, you want something that doesn't contain carbohydrates, so your best sources are going to be meat and dairy. Things like ground beef, eggs, those are usually my go-to. I'll usually have some eggs with some cheese and either some kale or broccoli. That's usually a go-to breakfast for me, but I'm not a big pork fan or things of that nature, so I like to keep it to beef or eggs because they're a little fattier. Again, I'm not a big pork fan, but if you are and you feel okay with it in your body, then this is the time where you could have things like breakfast sausages or bacon, as long as they're from good sources, good quality sources, without a lot of additives and preservatives. And adding a fat source, like I said, I usually add cheese. I'll usually add some coconut oil. Coconut oil is my go-to for energy because coconut oil is a multi-chain triglyceride, or an MCT. An MCT basically means that To break down fat and use it for fuel in the body takes longer. There's a whole process where it has to get broken down. MCTOs, to keep it simple, will skip that process. They're a readily available energy source that comes from fat. So I like to throw some of those in my breakfast to give me a good kickstart, give me a good energy flow, but not crash me like we talked about with carbohydrates. So that's basically what my breakfast consists of, and kind of gives you a guideline as to how you can build yours. It doesn't need to be anything specific, just sticking to those three categories: the protein source, the fat source, and the green leafy vegetable, and keeping carbohydrates to a minimum. That's my first thing for the day. Hopefully that all makes sense. As well, I will throw it out there again that my ebook is available. This video should be going to members of my site, so you members have access to my ebook as well, which kind of dives a little bit in deeper on each of these points. But we'll move on. So the second thing that we're going to touch on today is BCAAs, branched chain amino acids. They've become all the craze. I mean, they're basically the hottest thing in the supplement industry right now. People are making millions off of them. Each time I've prepped for a show, I have used branched chain amino acids. The reason being, the only time I think you need branched chain amino acids is when you're lower in carbohydrates. When you have a stored amount of carbohydrates, your muscles will store carbohydrates. So when you have a stored amount of carbohydrates, your body will have them readily available to burn inside the muscle. Now, when you're dieting down or you're in a lower calorie state, generally the first thing that goes for most people is their carbohydrate intake. I usually keep people's fat content and people's protein content about the same. And then the first thing that drops is the carbohydrate intake. So when your carbohydrate intake is lower, you're going to need something else to make sure that you're not burning out too much of that glycogen and starting to tap into muscle stores, and you're going to preserve as much muscle mass as possible. That is where I think branched chain amino acids come into play. If you're taking an abundance of carbohydrates and you're set for the day, you've got your energy stores are full, you should be able to train as hard as you want, no problem, and not have a need for BCAAs. I think to a certain degree, a lot of people are wasting a ton of money on them. But like I said, there is a time and a place. But if you are eating carbohydrates pre-workout and post-workout, I think you're perfectly fine. If you're on a meal plan or a diet that restricts you from having carbohydrates either pre-workout or post-workout, then branched chain amino acids might be a good idea for you. Or if you're an endurance athlete that goes for 2 hours, 3 hours of intense, vigorous exercise, then branched chain amino acids could be a benefit to you to help preserve your muscle stores and not overtap your glycogen and start to tap into muscle fibers that you've worked hard to get. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. We'll move on to the third point for today. The third point is going to be something that I think is starting to become more mainstream. Over the last little bit, it hasn't been as mainstream, but I think it's starting to find its way in, and that is fish oil. Fish oil to me is huge. I rotate all my supplements usually. I will rotate them 6 to 8 weeks on, 4 weeks off is generally my approach. Fish oil is the one supplement that I do not rotate. I think you should always have it. It should be a staple in anyone's supplementation protocol. I think you should be anywhere from about 3 to 7 grams of fish oil a day, depending on who you are and what your nutritional needs look like. The biggest thing for me is if you do any research into naturopathic or alternative medicine type deals for any kind of disease or any kind of ailment, generally the protocol has some form of fish oil in it. So to me that's huge. If we're using it to treat, naturally if we're using it to treat as an alternative form of medicine to treat almost every ailment and every disease and every condition that I've looked up, then why wouldn't you want to take it just proactively? So fish oils contain omega-3, the fatty acids, which the two most important for me are EPA and DHA. They're fantastic for brain function, a necessity for brain function. The other thing to fish oil is it's fantastic for helping balance out your LDL and HDL levels, so your cholesterol. So over a long period of time with a proper diet, fish oil can definitely help improve your cholesterol. And the biggest thing for me is for women out there that are in that menopausal state. Fish oil has been drastically proven to preserve bone health, along with calcium, obviously. But fish oil has been proven to preserve bone health, so that's going to be huge for women getting into their later stages in life. So I think it kind of covers the ground on why everyone should be taking it. But the biggest thing for me is the balancing out the omega-3s and the omega-6s. So to put it simply, I'll try to break it down as simple as possible. The food industry has kind of I don't know what the right word for it is. The food industry has swarmed us with omega-6s that we don't know we're getting. It's smart business, and it makes a lot of money. The reason for that being omega-6s generally are grain and seed-based additives that they will add to food. Anything basically packaged, wrappered, boxed is usually going to contain your grain and seed sources that are omega-6 dense. This reasoning is that it lasts forever. You can put it on the shelf for years and it's not going to spoil, it's not going to go bad, and it's ridiculously cheap to use. So, like I said, smart business and it makes money, but it's also giving us an abundance of a nutrient that can be very dangerous for our body if we have too much of. This is the main reason why you hear people talking about how bad boxed and wrappered and packaged preservative foods are for you. That's the main reason. So taking in a omega-3 supplement, a fish oil supplement, will help balance out those levels. Essentially, the way I've heard it described best is the more omega-6s you take in, so the more of those junky foods you eat, or the more preservative-filled foods you eat, the more of a need you have for omega-3s. Like I said, I think everyone should take them into balance, but if you take in an abundance of omega-6s, then you need to take an abundance of omega-3s to balance it out. So that's the best way I've heard it described, and that is my rationale as to why I think they're so important for a society that we live in, that we get these accidental omega-6s, and the ones that we don't know we're taking in, that our food are full of this garbage. So I think we need the fish oils to balance that out. Hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions with any of these, feel free to contact me, and I will try to clarify when I have time to give you a better understanding. But that was just a brief touch on each of those topics, and I hope that you took something away from those. That is the point of this podcast, so our blog series, whatever you want to call it. So until next time, that was the important takeaways, and hopefully you took something away.